The golden afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of Windsor Castle as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood before her ornate mirror in the private chambers. Her reflection showed a woman who had grown from a nervous university student into someone destined for the throne. Today was different from any other state occasion she had attended. Tonight's state banquet would host the president of South Korea and his delegation, marking a crucial diplomatic moment for Britain. Catherine's personal dresser, Maria, carefully arranged the stunning sapphire tiara that once belonged to Princess Diana. The weight of history pressed gently against Catherine's temples as the precious stones caught the light. She had worn many tiaras before, but this one always reminded her of the legacy she was stepping into. The deep blue sapphires perfectly complemented her navy evening gown, a masterpiece of British craftsmanship that had taken months to create. "Your Royal Highness, you look absolutely radiant," Maria whispered as she made final adjustments to the flowing fabric. The gown was designed with subtle nods to Korean culture, featuring delicate embroidered patterns inspired by traditional Korean art. Catherine had insisted on these details, understanding that diplomacy often spoke through fashion as much as words. Meanwhile, in another wing of the castle, King Charles III was reviewing the evening's protocol with his private secretary. At 75, the king had attended hundreds of these formal occasions, but he still felt the weight of representing his nation on such important diplomatic stages. His burgundy military dress uniform was laid out precisely, every medal and decoration positioned with military precision. The Korean delegation arrived this morning, his secretary informed him. President Yoon and the First Lady were particularly impressed with the garden tour. They expressed genuine interest in our sustainability initiatives. Charles nodded thoughtfully. Environmental cooperation with South Korea had been one of his personal diplomatic priorities. As someone who had championed environmental causes for decades, he saw this state visit as an opportunity to strengthen ties on climate action and renewable energy partnerships. Prince William was in his study, reviewing briefing notes about Korean-British trade relationships. As the heir apparent, he understood that these occasions were not merely ceremonial. They were opportunities to build relationships that could last for generations. His black tie evening wear hung nearby, elegant in its simplicity compared to the formal military dress his father would wear. William's phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "The children send their love for tonight. Charlotte insisted I wear her favorite tiara." He smiled, thinking of his daughter's excitement about the sparkly crown her mother would wear. These family moments grounded him before the formality of state occasions. In the castle's kitchen, a team of world-class chefs was putting finishing touches on a menu that had taken weeks to perfect. The head chef had worked closely with Korean culinary experts to create a fusion that honored both British traditions and Korean flavors. The evening would feature dishes like Korean spiced beef with Yorkshire pudding, and a dessert that combined traditional British trifle with Korean pear and ginseng flavors. The state dining room was a vision of crystalline perfection. Hundreds of pieces of the finest china, crystal glasses that sparkled like diamonds, and silverware polished to mirror brightness covered the long mahogany table. Each place setting represented hours of preparation by the castle staff, who took immense pride in these grand occasions. Fresh flowers from the castle gardens created centerpieces that celebrated both British roses and Korean chrysanthemums. The floral arrangements had been designed to facilitate conversation while adding natural beauty to the formal setting. Every detail had been considered, from the height of the arrangements to ensure guests could see across the table, to the selection of flowers that would not trigger any allergies among the distinguished guests. As the afternoon progressed, Catherine found herself in the nursery, sharing a quiet moment with Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. Although they were too young to attend the state banquet, she wanted them to understand the importance of the evening. "Mama looks like a real princess," Charlotte declared, clapping her hands as she admired her mother's preparation. Catherine knelt carefully in her elaborate gown to embrace her children, mindful not to disturb the intricate beadwork. "Remember, we represent not just our family, but our entire country when we welcome visitors," she explained gently to George, who at 10 was beginning to understand his future role. "Tonight, we're showing our Korean friends how much we value their friendship." The Korean delegation was equally preparing for this significant evening. President Yoon Suk-yeol and First Lady Kim Ki-yeon had brought gifts that represented the finest of Korean culture. Traditional handicrafts, rare teas, and symbolic items that would be exchanged during the evening's ceremonies. The First Lady had chosen a stunning hanbok-inspired evening gown that honored her heritage while respecting British formal dress codes. Cultural advisors from both nations had spent months ensuring that every gesture, every tradition, and every symbol would be understood and appreciated. This state banquet was not just a dinner. It was a bridge between two proud nations with rich histories and promising futures. Security teams had been coordinating for weeks, ensuring that the evening would proceed smoothly while maintaining the dignity and openness that characterized such diplomatic occasions. The careful balance between accessibility and security required intricate planning that most guests would never see or appreciate. As evening approached, Catherine took a final look in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was confident, poised, and ready to represent her country with grace. She thought briefly of all the people who had supported her journey to this moment, from her parents in Bucklebury to the palace staff who helped her navigate royal protocol. The sound of horses' hooves on cobblestones announced the arrival of the Korean delegation. Through her window, Catherine could see the ceremonial carriages approaching, carrying guests who had traveled thousands of miles to strengthen the bonds between their nations. Soon, she would descend the grand staircase to greet them, beginning an evening that would be remembered for its warmth, dignity, and the promise of continued friendship between Britain and South Korea. The grand entrance hall of Windsor Castle buzzed with anticipation as footmen in their finest livery took their positions along the sweeping staircase. Catherine descended slowly, her hand gliding along the polished banister, each step measured and graceful. The sapphire tiara caught the light from the crystal chandeliers above, creating tiny rainbows that danced across the walls. Her navy gown flowed behind her like liquid silk, the Korean-inspired embroidery subtly glinting with silver thread. King Charles stood at the base of the stairs, resplendent in his military dress uniform. The burgundy fabric was adorned with medals that told the story of his decades of service to the Crown and Commonwealth. His presence commanded respect, but his warm smile revealed the genuine pleasure he felt in hosting this important diplomatic gathering. Years of experience had taught him that successful state visits depended as much on personal connections as formal protocol. Prince William emerged from the library corridor, adjusting his white bow tie with the practiced ease of someone who had attended countless formal occasions. His black evening wear was impeccably tailored, striking in its elegant simplicity. As he joined his father and wife in the entrance hall, the three of them formed a picture of modern British royalty, respectful of tradition yet approachable and contemporary. "The carriages have arrived," announced the Lord Chamberlain, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of royal protocol. Through the massive doors, they could hear the ceremonial guard presenting arms and the distant sound of the Korean national anthem being played by the military band. These ancient traditions served as a bridge between nations, showing respect through time-honored customs. Catherine felt a familiar flutter of anticipation mixed with responsibility. She had grown comfortable with state occasions over the years, but each one brought unique challenges and opportunities. Tonight was particularly significant because she had taken a personal interest in Korean culture, spending weeks learning about the nation's history, art, and diplomatic priorities. Her efforts to connect authentically with their guests would be put to the test. The massive oak doors swung open, revealing President Yoon Suk-yeol and First Lady Kim Kyeon-hee approaching through the formal entrance. The president walked with the confident bearing of a leader who had guided his nation through complex international challenges. His evening wear was impeccably styled, respecting British formal traditions while maintaining his distinctive personal dignity. First Lady Kim was breathtaking in her evening gown, which beautifully merged Korean design elements with Western formal wear. The silk fabric shimmered with subtle patterns reminiscent of traditional Korean textiles, while the cut and styling honored the formality of the British court. Her jewelry featured Korean pearls and jade, telling a story of her nation's natural treasures. "Your Majesty, Your Royal Highnesses," President Yoon said with a respectful bow as he was presented to King Charles. The formal greeting was warm despite its ceremonial nature, reflecting the genuine friendship that had developed between the two leaders during previous diplomatic meetings. King Charles stepped forward with both hands extended. "Mr. President, Mrs. Kim, welcome to Windsor Castle. We are delighted to have you here for this celebration of the enduring friendship between our two nations." His words carried the weight of sincerity, reflecting months of preparation for this visit and years of diplomatic relationship building. Catherine moved gracefully forward as she was introduced to the First Lady. "Mrs. Kim, what an honor to meet you." I have been so looking forward to our conversations this evening. Your work in promoting Korean culture internationally has been truly inspiring. She had spent considerable time researching the First Lady's initiatives, wanting their interaction to be meaningful rather than merely polite. Your Royal Highness, thank you for such a warm welcome. First Lady Kim replied in excellent English. I am particularly honored to be here at Windsor Castle. The history and tradition of this place is overwhelming in the most beautiful way. Her genuine appreciation for the setting was evident in her voice and expression. Prince William engaged President Yoon in conversation about trade relationships between their nations. Mr. President, the economic partnership between Britain and South Korea continues to grow stronger each year. We are particularly excited about the opportunities in renewable energy and technology innovation. His comments reflected briefings he had received about specific areas where cooperation could be expanded. As they moved through the castle's corridors toward the state dining room, Catherine found herself walking alongside First Lady Kim, their conversation flowing naturally despite the formal setting. I understand you have a background in the arts, Catherine said. I would love to hear about how you see cultural exchange strengthening diplomatic relationships. Art and culture speak a universal language, Mrs. Kim replied thoughtfully. When people share stories, music, and visual arts, they connect as human beings rather than just as representatives of their countries. I believe this creates stronger foundations for all other forms of cooperation. The state dining room revealed itself in all its magnificent splendor as they entered. Gasps of appreciation came from several members of the Korean delegation as they took in the stunning table settings, elaborate floral arrangements, and the room's historic grandeur. The long mahogany table stretched before them, set for 80 guests with precision that would make military quartermasters proud. Each place setting told a story of British craftsmanship and attention to detail. The china featured designs that incorporated both British and Korean motifs, specially commissioned for this visit. Crystal glasses caught and reflected the light from multiple chandeliers, creating an atmosphere that was both formal and warmly welcoming. The silverware had been polished to such brilliance that it seemed to glow against the dark wood of the table. Catherine noticed First Lady Kim examining the floral centerpieces with particular interest. These are beautiful, Mrs. Kim commented, leaning slightly to inhale the fragrance of the Korean chrysanthemums mixed with English roses. The combination is so thoughtful. It shows how different traditions can complement each other perfectly. That was exactly what we hoped to achieve, Catherine replied with genuine pleasure. Our head gardener worked with Korean horticultural experts to create arrangements that would honor both our traditions. We wanted every detail of this evening to reflect the respect and friendship between our nations. King Charles was engaged in animated conversation with President Yoon about climate change initiatives. Your country's commitment to renewable energy has been remarkable, the king said. The speed with which South Korea has embraced solar and wind technology provides an excellent model for other nations to follow. Your Majesty, your own leadership on environmental issues has been inspiring to leaders around the world, President Yoon responded. When the future King of England speaks about sustainability, people listen. We hope to learn from Britain's experience in balancing economic growth with environmental responsibility. Prince William found himself discussing technological innovation with several members of the Korean delegation. The conversation covered everything from artificial intelligence research to space exploration programs. The collaboration between our universities and research institutions continues to produce remarkable results, he noted. British and Korean scientists working together are pushing the boundaries of what we thought possible just a decade ago. As guests began finding their assigned seats, Catherine moved through the room with natural grace, ensuring that everyone felt welcomed and comfortable. Her ability to remember names, personal details, and previous conversations made each interaction feel personal rather than merely diplomatic. Years of royal engagements had taught her that genuine interest in people created the strongest foundation for successful international relationships. The evening's first course was about to be served, and anticipation filled the elegant room. Conversations in multiple languages created a pleasant hum of international diplomacy in action. Catherine caught sight of herself in one of the room's mirrors and felt a moment of quiet satisfaction. This was what she had trained for, what she was meant to do. Tonight, she would help strengthen bonds between nations through the ancient art of hospitality and genuine human connection. The ceremonial presentation of gifts began as King Charles rose from his position at the head of the magnificent table. The dining room fell into respectful silence, with only the gentle clinking of crystal and the soft rustle of formal evening were audible. Catherine watched as her father-in-law prepared to speak, admiring how naturally he commanded attention without demanding it. Decades of public speaking had given him an ease that made even the most formal occasions feel warm and personal. "Your Excellency, distinguished guests," King Charles began, his voice carrying clearly through the room. "Tonight we gather not merely as representatives of our respective nations, but as friends united by common values and shared aspirations for the future." His words were carefully chosen, reflecting months of diplomatic preparation while maintaining the genuine warmth that characterized his personal style. President Yoon stood to respond, his bearing dignified and confident. "Your Majesty, Your Royal Highnesses, honored guests, we are deeply moved by the magnificent hospitality shown to us here at Windsor Castle. The friendship between Korea and Britain grows stronger with each passing year, built on mutual respect and shared commitment to democratic values." Catherine found herself genuinely moved by the sincerity in both leaders' voices. These were not empty diplomatic platitudes, but expressions of real relationships that had been carefully cultivated over years of interaction. She had seen her father-in-law develop these connections through patient, consistent engagement with world leaders, always focusing on areas of common ground rather than differences. As the gift exchange commenced, Catherine was invited to participate in presenting a specially commissioned piece to First Lady Kim. The item was a stunning brooch featuring British pearls and sapphires arranged in a design that incorporated elements of Korean traditional jewelry. Catherine had been involved in its design, working with royal jewelers to create something that would be both beautiful and meaningful. "Mrs. Kim, this piece represents the blending of our artistic traditions," Catherine explained as she presented the elegant box. "The pearls come from British waters, while the design draws inspiration from the beautiful Korean jewelry traditions that have been passed down through generations." Her research into Korean cultural heritage had given her genuine appreciation for the craftsmanship and symbolism in traditional Korean arts. First Lady Kim's reaction was immediately evident in her expression of delight and surprise. "Your Royal Highness, this is absolutely exquisite," she said, carefully examining the brooch in its velvet presentation case. "The craftsmanship is extraordinary, and the thoughtfulness of combining our traditions is deeply touching. This will be treasured not just by me, but by my country." The Korean gifts proved equally thoughtful and impressive. President Yoon presented King Charles with a set of ancient Korean texts that had been specially translated, along with a modern interpretation of traditional Korean calligraphy that spelled out wishes for continued friendship between their nations. The artistic presentation was stunning, combining classical techniques with contemporary design sensibilities. For Catherine, First Lady Kim had selected a silk scarf created by one of Korea's most renowned textile artists. The fabric told the story of Korean seasons through delicate hand-painted designs, with each corner representing a different time of year. This represents the cycle of growth and renewal that characterizes the best international friendships, Mrs. Kim explained as Catherine admired the intricate artwork. "It's absolutely beautiful," Catherine responded, genuinely moved by the thoughtfulness of the selection. "I can see why Korean textiles are celebrated around the world. The artistry and attention to detail are remarkable." She made a mental note to learn more about the artist who had created the piece, wanting to honor the gift by understanding its cultural significance. Prince William received a collection of Korean literature in English translation, carefully selected to represent both classical and contemporary Korean voices. The books had been bound in traditional Korean style, with handcrafted covers that were works of art in themselves. President Yoon explained that literature had always been a bridge between cultures, allowing people to understand each other's hopes, dreams, and challenges. As dinner service began, the fusion menu created by the collaborative team of British and Korean chefs proved to be a revelation. The first course combined traditional British game with Korean spices and preparation techniques, creating flavors that honored both culinary traditions while creating something entirely new. Conversations around the table focused on the food, with guests from both delegations expressing amazement at how seamlessly the cuisines complemented each other. Catherine found herself seated between a Korean trade minister and a British diplomat who had spent years working in Seoul. The conversation flowed easily between discussions of cultural exchange programs, educational partnerships, and shared challenges facing both nations. She was struck by how much common ground existed between countries that were separated by thousands of miles, but united by similar values and aspirations. Princess Catherine, the Korean minister said, "Your reputation for supporting educational initiatives is well known in our country. We would be honored to explore ways that Korean and British schools might collaborate more extensively." His suggestion sparked an immediate interest in Catherine, who had long believed that educational exchange created the strongest foundations for international understanding. "I would be delighted to explore such possibilities," Catherine replied enthusiastically. Young people are natural ambassadors for their countries, and when they form friendships across cultural boundaries, they create lasting bonds that benefit everyone. Her work with various educational charities had shown her repeatedly how quickly young people adapted to different cultures and formed meaningful connections. The British diplomat shared stories of his experiences living in Seoul, describing the warmth and hospitality he had received from Korean families and colleagues. The Korean concept of nunchi, understanding social situations and responding appropriately, has made me a better diplomat, he explained. Korean culture emphasizes harmony and mutual respect in ways that have enriched my understanding of effective international relations. King Charles was engaged in a fascinating conversation with President Yoon about the role of constitutional monarchy in modern democratic societies. Despite their different governmental systems, both leaders shared concerns about maintaining democratic institutions while adapting to rapidly changing global circumstances. Their discussion was substantive yet respectful, acknowledging differences while finding common ground in their commitment to serving their people. Prince William found himself discussing military cooperation and veterans affairs with several members of the Korean delegation. Both nations had strong military traditions and shared commitments to supporting those who had served their countries. The conversation touched on everything from joint training exercises to innovative programs for helping veterans transition to civilian careers. As the evening progressed, the formal structure of the state banquet gradually gave way to more relaxed conversations. Catherine noticed how the combination of excellent food, beautiful surroundings, and genuine mutual respect had created an atmosphere where real relationships could develop. These were the moments when diplomacy became personal, when representatives of different nations began to see each other as individuals rather than merely official positions. The wine service featured selections from both British vineyards and Korean traditional beverages, allowing guests to experience flavors that told stories of their respective lands and climates. Toasts were offered in multiple languages, with translations provided so that everyone could understand the sentiments being expressed. Each toast emphasized themes of friendship, cooperation, and hope for the future. Catherine raised her glass during one toast, speaking directly to First Lady Kim, to the bond between strong women who serve their countries with dedication and grace. May our friendship continue to inspire cooperation between our nations for generations to come. The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable, reflecting genuine admiration for her counterpart's accomplishments and character. The evening's entertainment began as the final course was being served, transforming the state dining room into something approaching a cultural celebration. Catherine had worked closely with the cultural attaches from both nations to design a program that would showcase the artistic heritage of both countries while creating opportunities for genuine cultural exchange. The careful planning was evident as performers took their positions with seamless precision. A string quartet from the Royal College of Music opened with a piece that blended traditional British melodies with Korean musical themes. The composition had been specially commissioned for this evening, representing months of collaboration between British and Korean composers. Catherine watched the faces of the Korean delegation as familiar melodies from their homeland wove through the classical British musical structure, seeing recognition and pleasure in their expressions. First Lady Kim leaned toward Catherine during the performance. "This is extraordinary," she whispered. "To hear our traditional songs interpreted through British classical music creates something entirely new while honoring both traditions." Her appreciation was evident in the way she moved slightly with the music, clearly recognizing the Korean elements while enjoying the unfamiliar harmonies. King Charles had requested that the evening include poetry readings in both languages, understanding that literature often expressed the soul of a nation more effectively than any diplomatic speech. A renowned British actor began with excerpts from Shakespeare and contemporary British poets, his voice carrying clearly through the ornate room. The words spoke of friendship, honor, and the connections that bind people across vast distances. President Yoon then introduced a Korean poet who had accompanied the delegation specifically for this cultural exchange. Speaking first in Korean and then offering English translation, she shared verses that celebrated the beauty of international friendship and the hope that came from nations choosing cooperation over conflict. Catherine found herself moved by the universal themes expressed in unfamiliar rhythms and sounds. Poetry reminds us that despite our different languages and customs, we share the same fundamental human experiences, Catherine observed to the guests seated nearby. Love, hope, friendship, and dreams for the future speak the same language in every culture. Her comment sparked a broader conversation about the role of arts in diplomacy and cultural understanding. The entertainment continued with a demonstration of traditional Korean dance, performed by artists who had traveled from Seoul specifically for this occasion. Their colorful hanbok costumes transformed the formal British dining room into something magical, with flowing fabrics and graceful movements that told stories of Korean history and cultural values. Catherine was mesmerized by the elegance and precision of their performance. Prince William found himself in animated discussion with a Korean technology entrepreneur about the role of innovation in strengthening international relationships. When British and Korean engineers work together on cutting-edge projects, they create more than just new technology, the entrepreneur explained. They build understanding between our peoples that extends far beyond the workplace. That's exactly what we hope to achieve through increased educational and business exchanges, William replied. Innovation requires diversity of thought, and when our brightest minds work together, everyone benefits. His genuine interest in technology and its diplomatic implications was evident in the detailed questions he asked about specific collaborative projects. As coffee and traditional Korean tea were served, Catherine noticed how the formal barriers that had existed at the beginning of the evening had dissolved into genuine conversation and laughter. Guests from both delegations were exchanging contact information, making plans for future collaborations, and discovering personal connections that transcended their official roles. The gift exchange expanded beyond the formal presentations as individual guests began sharing personal tokens of friendship. Catherine received a small piece of Korean ceramics from a member of the cultural delegation, while she offered a selection of photographs from the royal collection that featured British-Korean diplomatic meetings throughout history. These spontaneous exchanges often proved more meaningful than the official gifts, representing genuine personal connections. First Lady Kim approached Catherine with a proposal that would extend their evening's connection into ongoing cooperation. Your Royal Highness, I would like to invite you to visit Korea as our personal guest. We could arrange for you to meet with Korean artists, educators, and community leaders who are doing remarkable work that might interest your charitable foundations. I would be absolutely delighted, Catherine responded immediately. From tonight's conversations, I can see there are so many opportunities for meaningful collaboration between our countries. A visit would allow me to understand Korean culture more deeply and explore ways we might work together on shared challenges. Her enthusiasm was genuine, reflecting her belief that personal relationships were the foundation of effective international cooperation. King Charles had been observing the evening's interactions with the satisfaction of someone who had spent decades perfecting the art of diplomatic hospitality. He could see that this state banquet was achieving its primary purpose, creating an atmosphere where meaningful relationships could develop between people who might otherwise interact only through formal channels. Mr. President, Charles said to President Yoon, I hope this evening has provided opportunities for your delegation to experience British hospitality while sharing Korean culture with us. These personal connections often prove more valuable than any formal agreement we might sign. His observation reflected years of experience in international relations, where trust and friendship frequently determine the success of official partnerships. President Yoon nodded thoughtfully. Your Majesty, this evening has exceeded all our expectations. The warmth of your welcome, combined with the obvious effort to honor Korean traditions, demonstrates a level of respect that will be remembered by our people for years to come. This is how lasting friendships between nations are built. The conversation turned to practical matters as both sides began discussing specific areas where cooperation might be expanded. Educational exchanges, cultural programs, technology partnerships, and environmental initiatives all received attention. Catherine found herself taking mental notes about programs that might align with her charitable work, particularly those focused on early childhood development and mental health awareness. A member of the Korean delegation who worked in sustainable development engaged Prince William in detailed discussion about renewable energy projects. Your commitment to environmental causes is well known in Korea, she said. We have been inspired by your Earthshot Prize and would love to explore ways Korean innovators might participate in future competitions. That's exactly the kind of international collaboration we hope to inspire, William replied enthusiastically. Environmental challenges don't respect national boundaries, so our solutions must be equally international. Korean innovation in clean technology could provide answers that benefit the entire world. As the evening progressed toward its conclusion, Catherine realized that she had experienced something special. This had been more than a successful state banquet. It had been a genuine meeting of minds and hearts between people from different cultures who shared common values and aspirations. The formal protocols had provided structure, but the real success had come from authentic human connections. The musicians concluded their performance with a collaborative piece that required both British and Korean instruments to create the full harmonic structure. As the final notes faded, spontaneous applause erupted around the room, with guests from both nations acknowledging not just the musical performance, but the evening's successful celebration of international friendship. Catherine looked around the room one final time before the formal conclusion of the banquet, taking in the sight of British and Korean guests engaged in animated conversations, exchanging ideas, and making plans for future collaboration. This was diplomacy at its finest, personal relationships that would endure long after the formal agreements were signed and the official photographs were archived. The formal conclusion of the state banquet arrived with the traditional royal toast, but Catherine could sense that the evening's real impact would extend far beyond the ceremonial closing. As King Charles rose for the final time, his bearing reflected both the satisfaction of successful diplomacy and the genuine warmth that had characterized the entire evening. The room fell into respectful silence, with guests from both nations turning their attention to their host. Your Excellency, distinguished friends, King Charles began, his voice carrying the weight of tradition while maintaining the personal warmth that had defined the evening. Tonight we have witnessed something beautiful, the transformation of formal diplomacy into genuine friendship. When people share stories, laughter, and dreams for the future, they create bonds that strengthen both our nations. President Yoon's response reflected similar sentiments as he stood to address the gathering. Your Majesty, this evening will be remembered not just for its magnificent hospitality, but for the authentic connections that have been formed between our peoples. We return to Korea carrying with us new friendships and renewed commitment to the partnership between our nations. Catherine felt a deep sense of accomplishment as she observed the warm interactions continuing even as the formal program concluded. Throughout the evening, she had watched carefully as relationships developed between guests who had arrived as diplomatic representatives and were departing as friends. These personal connections would provide the foundation for future cooperation in ways that formal agreements alone could never achieve. The presentation of commemorative gifts marked the ceremonial end of the banquet, but Catherine noticed that many guests were reluctant to conclude their conversations. Small groups continued discussing collaborative projects, cultural exchanges, and personal interests that transcended their official roles. This spontaneous extension of the evening demonstrated the genuine connections that had been formed. First Lady Kim approached Catherine one final time before the formal farewells began. Your Royal Highness, thank you for making this evening so special. Your personal attention to Korean culture and traditions has touched everyone in our delegation deeply. We hope this marks the beginning of a lasting friendship between us personally, as well as between our countries. Mrs. Kim, the pleasure has been entirely mine, Catherine replied with genuine warmth. Tonight has reminded me why cultural diplomacy is so important. When we take time to understand each other's traditions and values, we discover how much we share in common. I look forward to continuing our friendship and exploring ways we can work together. Prince William was engaged in final conversations with Korean business leaders about technology partnerships and innovation exchanges. His genuine interest in Korean advances in renewable energy and artificial intelligence had sparked detailed discussions that would likely continue through official channels in the coming weeks. These connections between future leaders could shape international cooperation for decades. The relationship between our countries has such tremendous potential, William remarked to President Yoon during their farewell conversation. When I see the innovation and creativity of Korean entrepreneurs alongside British researchers and inventors, I envision partnerships that could change the world for the better. King Charles made a point of personally thanking each member of the Korean delegation, demonstrating the attention to detail and respect for individuals that characterized his approach to international relations. His decades of experience had taught him that successful diplomacy depended on personal relationships, and he invested time in creating connections that would endure beyond formal state occasions. The evening's success was evident in the reluctance of guests to depart. Long after the formal program had concluded, animated conversations continued throughout the castle's reception areas. British and Korean guests had discovered shared interests in everything from classical music to environmental conservation, creating the foundation for ongoing personal and professional relationships. Catherine's lady-in-waiting approached discreetly to inform her that the children had waited up to hear about the evening, despite the late hour. The reminder of her family responsibilities brought a smile to Catherine's face as she realized how she would share this experience with George, Charlotte, and Louis. Tonight would become part of the family stories that connected their personal lives to their public duties. As the Korean delegation prepared to depart Windsor Castle, the traditional ceremonial farewells took on additional warmth because of the genuine friendships that had developed. The exchange of final gifts, the formal handshakes, and the promises to stay in touch reflected relationships that had evolved far beyond diplomatic protocol during the course of a single evening. Catherine found herself reflecting on the evening's significance as she watched the Korean motorcade disappear into the night. This state banquet had demonstrated the power of thoughtful hospitality combined with genuine interest in other cultures. By taking time to understand Korean traditions and incorporating them respectfully into British customs, they had created an experience that honored both nations while building bridges for the future. The success of the evening would be measured not just in the positive press coverage or diplomatic reports, but in the ongoing relationships that would develop from the connections made tonight. Catherine knew that she would receive invitations to visit Korea, participate in cultural exchange programs, and collaborate on charitable initiatives that would benefit both countries. Prince William was already discussing with his private secretary the possibility of a reciprocal visit to Seoul, where they could experience Korean hospitality and continue the relationships that had begun tonight. The idea of deepening their understanding of Korean culture while strengthening diplomatic ties appealed to his long-term vision for international cooperation. King Charles retired to his private study with President Yoon's gifts, taking time to appreciate the thoughtfulness and craftsmanship that had gone into each item. These personal tokens of friendship would remind him of the evening's success and the potential for continued cooperation between their nations on issues ranging from climate change to cultural preservation. The castle staff began the extensive process of clearing and cleaning after such a significant event, but their efficiency was tempered by obvious pride in the evening's success. From the kitchen staff, who had created the remarkable fusion menu, to the footmen who had served with invisible precision, everyone had contributed to an evening that would be remembered as a diplomatic triumph. As Catherine finally retired to her private chambers, she took a moment to record her thoughts about the evening in her personal journal. These state occasions were opportunities to represent her country while learning about the world, and tonight had provided insights into Korean culture that would inform her future international engagements. The sapphire tiara was carefully returned to its case, the beautiful gown hung with museum-quality attention to preservation. But the memories and relationships formed during this state banquet would last far longer than any material elements of the evening. Catherine had experienced the profound satisfaction that came from successful diplomacy, the knowledge that personal connections had been forged that would strengthen the friendship between nations. Looking toward the future, Catherine could envision the ongoing impact of this single evening. The educational exchanges that would develop from tonight's conversations, the cultural programs that would emerge from new friendships, and the diplomatic cooperation that would flow from personal trust and mutual respect. This was the true measure of successful international relations, relationships that would benefit both nations for generations to come. The state banquet had concluded, but its impact was just beginning. In the months and years ahead, the connections formed on this magical evening at Windsor Castle would blossom into collaborations, friendships, and partnerships that would make the world a little smaller and significantly more connected.